Welcome into NBA Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Today's mock draft as we go the entire length of the first round is presented to you by Magic Spoon. Go to magicspoon.com/chat. You get $5 off your purchase per serving. You get 13 grams of protein, 4 grams of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, a bevy of delicious flavors, which we'll tell you about coming up. That link is in the description, as well as the comment section of this video. It's healthy cereal that is also very tasty. Magic Spoon is killing the game, and I guarantee you Magic Spoon will rock your taste buds because, look, the cereal that we ate when we were kids, it might have tasted good, but it was loaded with awful ingredients that made you fat. Magic Spoon is the complete opposite. Coming your way on NBA Now, our latest NBA mock draft. We're going the entire length of the first round. And according to some recent reports from Jonathan Givony of ESPN, one of their draft experts, it is not a lock that Cade Cunningham out of Oklahoma State is going to go number 1 in the draft to the Detroit Pistons. So we're going to operate under the premise that Cade Cunningham is not going to go at number 1, and we're going to take a look at the draft order as if those ramifications come to fruition and Cade isn't the number 1 player. So without further ado, let's get to our latest mock draft here on Chat Sports. With the number 1 pick, the Detroit Pistons go with Jalen Green, guard out of the G League. He played for the Ignite this past year. And why I think Jalen Green is a realistic option to go number 1 ahead of a guy like Cade Cunningham, who I also think could be a generational prospect, is because Jalen Green's scoring ability is going to be able to translate immediately to the NBA level. And what's the most important trait for any draft prospect, given how the game has changed over the last several years? It's scoring. And when I watch Green, he reminds me a lot from an athletic standpoint and a scoring standpoint of guys like Bradley Beal as well as Zach LaVine. He's so bouncy, but also he can go off any given night. And I think he's going to remind a lot of people of Anthony Edwards. There are going to be nights during his rookie season where he wows you and he scores 30 points. There are also going to be nights where he's maddening and very, very frustrating. He's going to be somewhat inconsistent, but you take Green at number 1 with the hope that he is going to be the next premier scorer across the NBA. Number 2 to the Houston Rockets, it's Cade Cunningham. And I think that's a logical scenario for Cade to drop to number 2. And if the Rockets, who kind of got unlucky by not getting the number 1 overall selection, they luck into Cade Cunningham, that's a wonderful scenario and situation for them because I think this is a franchise pillar who you can really build around. He's an all-around cat who has great passing vision. He can score from all 3 levels. He can score with his back to the basket. He was able to extend his game to the three-point arc. He's an elite free throw shooter as well, so that tells me that stroke is also going to be able to translate to the NBA level as well. And his passing, his size, his physicality, his athleticism reminds me a lot of a guy like Ben Simmons. But unlike Ben Simmons, Cade Cunningham, you look at his numbers, not afraid to shoot the basketball either. At all. He's a great leader. He's a cold-blooded killer. And Cade Cunningham to number 2 at the Houston Rockets. I think this is a very, very good pick and a good situation for Houston. Speaking of good situations for franchises that really need to rebuild, Evan Mobley, number 3 out of USC to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Very, very good pick. Evan Mobley has the potential to be a Chris Bosh-like player. Has an all-around game. He can guard positions 1 through 5. He has boomer bust potential. If he's able to develop his offensive game and extend himself offensively to the three-point arc, Evan Mobley is a guy who averaged 16.5 points per game last year, can guard every single position on the floor, is athletic like a Chris Bosh, is an outstanding defender, and if he develops his offensive game, this guy can be the best draft prospect coming out of this 2021 class. And for the Cavaliers, if you hold on to Colin Sexton, you're looking at a young trio of Sexton, Garland, Evan Mobley. That is a trio that you can certainly build with. So tell me this, Hoopers. Pick one player that you can start your franchise with. Jalen Green, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley. Type JG for Jalen Green. Type CC for Cade Cunningham. Type EM for Evan Mobley. Be sure to get your votes in the comment section down below. We'll start running through these picks a little bit more quickly. Jalen Suggs, I think it's a great situation also for the Toronto Raptors. It looks as though Kyle Lowry is going to sign elsewhere in free agency. You replace Kyle Lowry with Jalen Suggs, who I think has a lot of comparisons to Jason Kidd. not only from a character standpoint of him being a floor general, but him being a leader, him being clutch, him having an all-around game. Love the way he played in the NCAA tournament. Think he could be an excellent pick for the Toronto Raptors as they reboot their franchise. Scottie Barnes has been climbing up draft boards like crazy. It is totally realistic that he could go number 5 to the Orlando Magic. Scottie Barnes is an uber-athletic wing who's an excellent defender. If he's able to take the next step offensively and develop some semblance of an outside shot, Scottie Barnes, like Evan Mobley, a boom or bust guy who has the potential to be one of the best players in this draft class. So too can Jonathan Kuminga. Also, like Jalen Green, played with the G League Ignite this past year, didn't go the college route. He goes number 6 to OKC in this latest mock as they continue to rebuild their franchise with a lot of really intriguing young pieces. Kuminga has been working on his shot during the G League bubble. For a short sample size there, some people and draft experts thought he could be the number 1 player in this class. Then he went ice cold from distance. If he improves there, he could be very, very elite. Davion Mitchell, he's a dog. He can defend. Reminds a lot of people of Donovan Mitchell. Have him going number 7 to the Golden State Warriors out of Baylor. Had an excellent NCAA tournament. He's so shifty and can get a bucket all across the floor. Franz Wagner, number 8 to the Orlando Magic out of Michigan. The very good player, a good shooter, a guy who is somewhat inconsistent in terms of his three-point shot, but a guy who has the potential to be a knockdown guy. And when you look at the needs for the Orlando Magic, they need an outside shooter. Franz Wagner certainly fits that profile. Keon Johnson out of Tennessee. At the NBA Draft Combine, he tested as one of the best athletes in this draft class. Number 9 to Sacramento, you have De'Aaron Fox, you have Tyrese Halliburton. You really need a wing. Hey, not many better wing options to go to than Keon Johnson. I like this fit. I like the player going 9 here to the Sacramento Kings. Another player who's been soaring up draft boards, it's James Bouknight. At the NBA Draft Combine, this guy tested really well, and at his pro day, it was said that he just couldn't miss a shot. He was unconscious. He was on fire. And like Jalen Green, which that's the argument that I made earlier, what's a number 1 skill set that you need for a prospect that immediately might translate to the NBA level? It's the scoring ability. And James Bouknight has that scoring ability. He reminds me a lot in that regard of a guy like Lou Williams. There will be some streaky nights. There will be some nights where you're like, wow, this guy's one of the most elite bucket getters in the NBA. There are going to be nights when he goes ice cold. But when James Bouknight is on, he is very, very good. And I think at number 10, you get very good value for a guy who has a boatload of potential. NBA Now presented to you by our friends at Magic Spoon. You go to magicspoon.com/chat, you get $5 off your purchase. If you're eating traditional, crappy cereal brands that are loaded with sugar, carbs, and awful ingredients, I just have a question for you. What are you doing? And I want to tell you this. You're making a big mistake by not hopping on board the Magic Spoon train because it is simply magical. Per serving, you get 13 grams of protein, 4 grams of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar. It's high in protein, keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, wheat-free, naturally flavored, totally delicious. It's basically childlike cereal for grown-ups because it's actually healthy for us. And I've talked about all of the great flavors from Magic Spoon. There are a bunch of them. You can go with a variety pack using that link at the bottom of your screen and test out a bunch of these good flavors. But also, if you want to go single flavor, you can with Fruity. That's one of my favorites. It's actually in contention with peanut butter as my favorite Magic Spoon flavor. Cocoa is really good. Tastes a lot like Cocoa Puffs. Cinnamon, another really solid flavor from Magic Spoon. And then they have other secondary flavors like Frosted, Blueberry. Go to magicspoon.com/chat. You get $5 off your purchase and see what I'm talking about. Not only is it good for you, but it is also so delicious. Let's continue to hit this latest NBA mock draft from yours truly here at Chat Sports. Number 11 to the Charlotte Hornets, Corey Kispert. You continue to surround LaMelo Ball with some shooters. Corey Kispert's shooting numbers last year were truly elite from the field, from distance, and the free throw line. I think this guy is going to be a Joe Harris-like player in the future. Alperen Sengun, he's getting a lot of buzz. And him going to the San Antonio Spurs is absolutely perfect because, as we know, the Spurs have had a lot of luck with international prospects. He just won the Turkish League MVP as a teenager. That is rarefied air. And when people look at the analytics of this draft class, they're saying Alperen Sengun, the best analytical player. Doesn't have a shot, something that he needs to improve on, but my gosh, he has a lot of potential. Jalen Johnson, number 13 to the Indiana Pacers. Are they going to trade away Malcolm Brogdon? Are they going to give away Domantas Sabonis? Are they going to trade away potentially Miles Turner? Those are some good players that under Rick Carlisle, he could look to get rid of as he continues to hit the reset button in his first year as the Indiana Pacers head coach. You want to start that reboot with a guy like Jalen Johnson? It's a logical pick at the back end of the NBA draft lottery. I think he's somewhat of a sleeper. Who do you think is the biggest sleeper in this draft class? There are a bunch of them, and we'll get to some more rounding out in the late teens and 20s who I think also can be considered as sleepers in this draft class. Let me know who your biggest sleeper is in the comment section down below. I think some people are also sleeping on Josh Giddey. This is a guy who, from a passing standpoint, reminds me a lot of Ben Simmons. His vision is truly, truly something to marvel at. Playing in Adelaide with the 36ers, Australian League, which is where LaMelo Ball played last year, as well as R.J. Hampton as well. A lot of draft prospects have come out of that league in Australia, and Josh Giddey is a guy who can really fill up the stat sheet. This past year, 28 games, not only was he an elite player, but he filled up the stat board, man. 10.9 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists. The shooting has to get much, much better, but the vision, I think, will allow him to be an immediate impact player right from the jump. Who's the best defensive player in this draft class? I think it's Usman Garuba, who played for Real Madrid in Spain. He's a forward center hybrid to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I like this pick as they continue to rebuild, retool that roster with some good versatile pieces who are also very, very athletic. From a scoring standpoint, Garuba isn't going to give you much, but he reminds me a lot defensively of a guy like Draymond Green because he can guard multiple positions and just be a lockdown physical defender. You look at the numbers in terms of scoring output, they're not all that great. You turn on the tape of him defensively, it is very, very good. Zaire Williams to the Memphis Grizzlies at number 17. You have Ja Morant. You have Jaren Jackson Jr. You have Dylan Brooks. What's missing there? It's a wing. And Zaire Williams kind of fits that profile. Impressed a lot of people as a five-star kid with Stanford last year. The numbers were up and down, but the athleticism certainly is there. And Memphis has shown the ability to really develop draft prospects over time. Brooks, Jackson, Ja Morant, a couple of those guys who have really taken off. Zaire Williams could be next up. One of the weirdest stories coming out of the NBA Draft Combine, the fact that Sharife Cooper mysteriously grew from 6'1 to 6'4. I think that's going to allow him to really jump up draft boards. He's a former McDonald's All-American, five-star player, very good scorer, probably the best passer of any point guard in this upcoming draft class. You get him to OKC and have a backcourt of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Sharife Cooper. That could be pretty dangerous as well. And I think because he grew since his freshman year at Auburn, I actually realistically think that teams are going to take stock in that, and he's going to be able to go up draft boards because of that. Sharife Cooper, the kind of profile has been there. The pedigree has been there as well. And for him to kind of go to OKC at this point in the draft, I think if the OKC Thunder are able to come away with Jonathan Kuminga, Usman Garuba, Sharife Cooper, that's a bevy of different options who fit a bunch of different skill sets. That rebuilding process under Sam Presti, it's going to get underway very, very quickly. We know the New York Knicks need a scorer. Cameron Thomas, he's a bucket getter. He's a dog. And he's one of the best scorers in this draft class. Now, here's the problem with Cameron Thomas. He doesn't really do anything other than score and shoot the basketball. Doesn't have good creation numbers. Can't play defense. But the good thing with the Knicks, they don't really need a guy to do that. They need a guy who can be a go-to scorer down the stretch. Cameron Thomas could be that in the future. Number 22, Atlanta. The Hawks, one of the best stories in recent NBA history, led by Trae Young in that run to the Eastern Conference Finals. You continue to build around them with guys like DeAndre Hunter, who didn't even basically play in the NBA playoffs. The Hawks have so many good young players. Cam Reddish came on the scene in limited minutes in the Eastern Conference Finals. You have Trae Young, John Collins, a couple of other really good young players. Jaden Springer adds to that core. The Hawks could continue to be very, very dangerous. We do a lot of fun things here at Chat Sports. We do mock drafts. We hit you with the latest NBA news and rumors. We do watch parties like we did for Game 1 of the NBA Finals. We basically do it all. We do it in a fun and creative way. All reasons for you to subscribe to what we're doing here at Chat Sports. You go to youtube.com/chatsportstv. Help get Chat Sports to 250,000 subscribers. Few more picks left. Ayo Dosunmu to the New York Knicks. Now, you get Springer as more of a two-guard. How about Ayo Dosunmu as a future point guard? You can't continue to trot out Elfrid Payton. Ayo Dosunmu, much better player with a lot more upside than a guy like Payton. I'd love for him to go to New York City and ball out in the Mecca. A lot of mocks have had Chris Duarte out of Oregon going to the Lakers. Lakers really need a knockdown three-point shooter who can consistently get buckets from beyond the arc. Chris Duarte, he'd be a perfect fit for the Lakers, and I think a rookie who can play right away. Now, you don't see a lot of rookies getting a lot of playing time with LeBron James because he likes to go with veteran players, as we know. Duarte, though, he's tall, he's long, he's a good knockdown shooter. He could get minutes right away with LA, even if they contend for a championship. Houston Rockets, hey, we have them getting Cade Cunningham in this draft. They also need a forward and a center. You have Christian Wood, who's more of a scoring guy in the front court. Kai Jones is a high flyer. He's a very, very good athlete, a guy who can either be an excellent backup center, which I think at 23 is pretty solid value here, or a guy who, if he develops, has the potential to be very, very good and a steal at number 23. I have him going to the Houston Rockets. Which NBA team needs a good draft the most? It's a very good question that we're cooking up for you here at Chat Sports because there are a lot of teams with a lot of needs going into the draft later this month. Which team, though, needs a good draft the most? Let us know in the comment section down below. Let's move on with our mock draft as we look at the last three players that we have: Ayo Dosunmu, Chris Duarte, Kai Jones. And as we project forward a little bit with only a few more picks left, who's going to be going to a team like the Houston Rockets with yet another first-round pick? Tre Mann out of Florida. This dude is a walking bucket. He's quick, he's fast, he's twitchy. And the Rockets, who are their guards right now? You have John Wall, but let's be honest, is he an elite player anymore? No. Can Tre Mann get some immediate minutes? I think so. At Florida, really flashed as a guy who can create. He's very quick. He can get to the cup. Reminds me a little bit of Dennis Schroeder to a certain degree. I think he has the potential to be a more consistent and better knockdown shooter, but I like Tre Mann going to the Houston Rockets. And look at this draft for the Rockets that we have for you. Cade Cunningham, Kai Jones, Tre Mann fits a variety of needs as the Rockets continue to build under Stephen Silas. Isaiah Jackson, a rim-running big who's also a good twitchy athlete, extremely long, played last year with Kentucky. The Clippers, you have Zubac. Outside of that, at the center spot, how about Isaiah Jackson as a backup? I love the way that Terrence Mann burst onto the scene in the NBA playoffs. Isaiah Jackson as a backup, though, love the fit to the Clippers. Jared Butler to the Denver Nuggets at pick number 26 out of Baylor. Him and Davion Mitchell, they formed one of the best backcourts of any college team last year. Jared Butler kind of can fit in well because he doesn't always need the ball with Jamal Murray. I like him going 26 to the Nuggets. Greg Brown out of Texas. He's either going to be really good or he's going to flunk because he's so raw as a prospect. But you go to the Brooklyn Nets and you're surrounded by superstars like Kyrie, KD, and James Harden. You don't really need to play a lot right away, but as an energetic guy, you're not going to be relied upon to do a bunch. That's why I think Brooklyn would be a good fit for Greg Brown, somewhat of a raw prospect, but a guy who can bring you a lot of quality minutes as an energetic force. Philadelphia 76ers, they need a go-to scorer. They also need some depth at the forward spots. Why not go with one of the hometown guys? Jeremiah Robinson-Earl out of Villanova. A lot of mock drafts have had JRE staying in Philly, going to the Sixers. Outside of like Tobias Harris, they don't have a good backup forward. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl could be that out of Villanova. Day'Ron Sharpe to the Phoenix Suns. This is not a knock on DeAndre Ayton. I think he's a bona fide superstar. But you can't continue to trot out Frank Kaminsky as the backup center. Just not realistic, especially considering you're going to be in that championship contending window for a long time. Day'Ron Sharpe could back up DeAndre Ayton and be a very good backup at that out of UNC. Pick number 30 to round out this mock draft. I have Rokas Jukabaitis out of Lithuania going to the Utah Jazz at pick number 30. He's going to remind a lot of people of Thomas Satoransky of the Chicago Bulls, kind of a shifty, pretty quality point guard. Utah Jazz certainly need one. Let me know what you think of this mock draft. Grade it for me in the comment section down below. A, B, C, D, or F. Go back to school and get your votes in.